paradrama tales. After requesting a small raise to reflect my hard work, my boss denied it. Then, she started expecting me to stay late whenever we were short-staffed. When I refused, she claimed loyalty no longer existed. That was the moment I realized I deserved better and everything had to change. When I first started at this job, I was excited. It was my first full-time position, and I knew it was a stepping stone. The retail world was new to me, but I wanted to prove that I could work hard and contribute to the team. I took it seriously. I showed up early, stayed late, picked up extra shifts whenever they were needed. I even volunteered to train new hires, helping them get acclimated to the fast-paced environment. I never shied away from responsibility, and I was always willing to step in when someone else didn't show up. The feeling of being needed, of being relied upon, kept me going. At first, it felt like I was making a difference. I could see the improvements I was helping bring about. The customers were happy, my team was functioning smoothly, and my manager seemed pleased with my work. But as time went on, I realized that my efforts were being taken for granted. I had become the go-to person whenever someone called out sick or whenever there was too much work for anyone else to handle. I worked extra hours, filled in for shifts, and took on more responsibility than anyone else on the team. All of it was unpaid, of course, but I didn't mind because I wanted to make a good impression and show how much I cared. Still, the more I gave, the more I felt like I was losing. My personal time became scarce. I had friends who would ask me to hang out, but I was too busy with work. I had family events that I missed, not because I didn't want to go, but because I had taken on too many shifts. I was burning out, but I didn't want to admit it. I just kept pushing myself, thinking that if I worked harder, it would eventually pay off. And then after weeks of doing everything I could, I finally decided to take a moment for myself. I'd been working too hard and hadn't even had a chance to catch my breath. That's when I decided to ask for a raise. After all the extra shifts, the late nights, and the constant hustle, I thought it was time for my efforts to be recognized. I thought maybe, just maybe, my loyalty would be rewarded. Maybe the work I'd put in would finally count for something. But when I asked for that raise, the answer was an immediate and flat-out no. That's when I started questioning everything. All those late nights, all those extra hours, all the things I sacrificed for the company and nothing to show for it. I had been giving everything, but I wasn't getting back what I deserved. It wasn't just about the money. It was about recognition, respect, and acknowledgement of all the hard work I had put in. Instead, I was left feeling like I had been taken advantage of. The worst part was that I didn't even feel like I could say anything. Whenever I spoke up about being overworked, I was told I needed to be more loyal. They expected me to keep giving without ever offering anything in return. But here's the thing. Loyalty isn't a one-way street. I had been loyal to the company, going above and beyond. But loyalty without respect, without recognition, without fair compensation isn't loyalty at all. It's exploitation. As much as I cared about my job, as much as I had put in, I realized that I couldn't keep working myself into the ground without getting anything back. I had sacrificed too much of my time and energy, and for what? A company that didn't even value my worth. That was when I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness and well-being for a company that wouldn't even give me $1 more an hour after all the hard work I'd done. It was time for me to put myself first, something I should have done a long time ago. After weeks of sacrificing my personal time, putting in extra shifts, and consistently picking up the slack, I finally reached a point where I felt like I deserved more. I had given so much to this job, training new employees, stepping in when others didn't show up, and working late nights. And I knew it was time to ask for a raise. I had never asked for a raise before, but after all I had done, it felt like the right moment to speak up. I remember the day I decided to ask. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon, but I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. I had been planning it out for days, rehearsing what I was going to say. I had evidence to back up my request. The hours I'd worked, the extra shifts I'd picked up. The fact that I was the go-to person when something needed to be done. I was confident that this was a reasonable request. All I was asking for was a small increase, a little recognition for the hard work I'd put in. I asked my manager to sit down with me in her office for a moment. I could tell she was busy, but I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to let the fear of rejection hold me back. When we sat down, I looked her in the eye and said, "I've been here for a while now, and I feel like I've been putting in a lot of effort. Extra hours, picking up shifts, training new hires. I think I've shown a lot of dedication, and I'd like to request a raise." It felt like a simple request. I wasn't asking for anything extravagant, just a small acknowledgement of the hard work I'd been putting in. I expected her to appreciate the fact that I was taking the initiative, that I was confident enough to ask for what I deserved. I thought, maybe, she'd recognize my commitment and reward me for it. But instead, the response I got was a flat-out no. No explanation, no discussion, just a simple refusal. She told me that they weren't in a position to give raises at the moment and that they had a budget they needed to stick to. I was caught off guard. I had been anticipating a conversation, some back and forth, maybe a negotiation. Instead, I was met with a firm, unyielding no. I tried to hold my composure, but inside, I felt crushed. All the hard work, all the extra hours, all the sacrifices I had made for this job, and for what? It was as if everything I had done meant nothing. I wasn't asking for the world, just a modest increase in my pay. But somehow that was too much to ask. I remember walking out of her office, my heart heavy. I had put myself out there and I had been rejected. I was trying to process the rejection when something else hit me. The way she had said it, with such finality and no room for discussion, made me feel small. As though my work wasn't valuable enough to warrant even a small raise. I didn't feel appreciated. I felt disposable. It was frustrating because I knew I was worth more. I knew I was putting in more than most people were, and I wasn't getting anything in return. But more than that, I felt like I was being taken advantage of. I had been loyal to this company, and in return, I had been shown nothing but indifference. At that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this rejection define me. I wasn't going to keep begging for something I deserved. If they weren't willing to recognize my value, then maybe it was time to look elsewhere. I had done enough for this job, and it was clear that they weren't going to appreciate me for it. So, I quietly began looking for other opportunities. It wasn't that I wanted to leave. I had enjoyed working there, and I had built relationships with my coworkers, but I knew I deserved better. I deserved to be in a job where my hard work was recognized, where my loyalty meant something. I wasn't going to settle for less just because I was afraid to move on. I had asked for a raise, and I had been denied. But what I learned in that moment was that sometimes rejection isn't about you. It's about the company not value what you bring to the table. And in that case, it was a clear sign that I wasn't in the right place. I deserved more than what they were willing to offer, and it was time to find a job that would see my worth. The day after I was denied the raise, I went into work with a feeling that I couldn't shake. A mix of frustration, disappointment, and confusion. I was still trying to process what had happened, but it was hard to focus on anything else. I had asked for a raise because I genuinely believed I deserved it, and I thought it would be a simple, reasonable request. Instead, I was met with a flat-out no with no real explanation or negotiation. I had hoped for an open discussion, maybe some feedback on how I could improve, but there was nothing. I walked into the store that morning and immediately noticed a shift. It wasn't just the normal hustle and bustle of the job. It was the subtle tension in the air, the way my manager avoided eye contact, the way other coworkers were acting slightly awkward around me. I felt like everyone knew what had happened. And as the day went on, I began to realize something. It wasn't just the raise that had hurt me. It was the way it was handled. The lack of communication. The way I was brushed off, like my hard work didn't matter. What stung the most was how easily I was dismissed. I had worked so hard for this company, giving up so much of my time, energy, and personal life. And when I asked for a small increase in pay, I was turned down without a second thought. It wasn't just about the money. It was the principle. I had given them loyalty, and all I was asking for was a recognition of that loyalty. But instead, they told me that I wasn't worth it. I kept replaying that moment in my head, the way she had told me there was no room for a raise. She didn't even give me a chance to explain why I thought I deserved it. She didn't ask for specifics about what I had been doing. It felt like I had been brushed aside, like it was nothing, like my value as an employee didn't matter. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much it had all been a lie. They had told me over and over again that they valued me. They told me they appreciated my hard work. But when it came time to show it, they couldn't even offer $1 more an hour. I felt like I had been duped, like all the promises of loyalty and appreciation had been empty words. I had been working my butt off, and in return, all I got was more work, more hours, and the constant expectation to give more. But when it came time for them to give something back, they couldn't even be bothered to meet me halfway. It was the attitude that bothered me the most. When I said no to staying late that night, I was hit with that cold, dismissive comment. Wow. I guess loyalty just doesn't exist anymore. I had been nothing but loyal to this company. I had given up my time, sacrificed my personal life, and always stepped up when needed. But the second I needed something in return, I was met with criticism and judgment. It felt like she was trying to make me feel guilty for not bending over backward for them anymore. as if I had done something wrong by asking for fair compensation for the work I had been doing. I thought about how long I had been working in this place, how many hours I had spent on my feet, how many times I had gone above and beyond for them. And yet, when I asked for something simple, something I was owed, they couldn't even give it to me. It felt like I had been lied to all along. All those times they said, "We really appreciate your dedication, and you're such a valuable part of the team," suddenly seemed meaningless. If they truly appreciated me, wouldn't they show it? Wouldn't they acknowledge my worth? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a one-time thing. This had been happening for months, maybe even longer. I had been giving more and more of myself, and they had been taking without ever giving anything back. And now that I was asking for something in return, I was treated like I was being unreasonable. Like my request for fair pay was somehow an act of betrayal. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I was being treated this way. I knew I deserved better. I knew I was worth more than they were willing to offer, and it wasn't just about the raise anymore. It was about how they had treated me, how they had used my loyalty against me to keep me working harder without offering anything in return. It was clear to me now I wasn't just being underpaid. I was being disrespected. I walked into work that day feeling like I had already made my decision. The way they had handled the situation, the way they had brushed me off, made it clear to me that this wasn't the kind of company I wanted to work for anymore. I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't valued, where my loyalty was used as a tool to get more out of me without giving anything back. As the days went on, I found myself questioning everything. I had been rejected. I had been dismissed. And yet here I was, still struggling to let go of the disappointment, still debating whether I was overreacting. Was I being unreasonable? Was I asking for too much? It was hard to avoid the doubt creeping in. The more I thought about the situation, the more I questioned my own feelings. I was just asking for a raise. Wasn't that a normal thing to do after working hard for months, maybe even years? But the rejection had left me feeling so small, so insignificant, that I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I was wrong for wanting more. Maybe I was being too demanding, too entitled. Maybe I wasn't loyal enough to the company for not agreeing to stay late one more time when they needed me. It wasn't that I didn't care about my job. I did. I had spent so much time and effort helping out, picking up extra shifts, and covering for others when they didn't show up. I wanted to be appreciated for all of it, but at the same time I kept wondering if my frustration was valid. Maybe I was asking for too much. Was it too much to ask for $1 more an hour when I had been going above and beyond? I thought about the moment when I asked for the raise. It felt like such a simple request at the time, a small recognition of my efforts. But in hindsight, I began to doubt whether I should have even asked in the first place. Maybe I should have kept working without complaint, kept showing up for the shifts, and kept sacrificing my personal time. After all, didn't everyone have to work hard to earn a living? Wasn't this just part of the job? The more I tried to talk myself into thinking it wasn't a big deal, the more I realized how exhausted I was from carrying this burden alone. But then, the internal battle continued. Was I wrong for feeling like I deserved more? Was it really that simple? I started to compare myself to my coworkers. They were all in the same boat, right? We all worked hard. We all picked up shifts when needed. But did any of them feel the way I did? Did they feel taken for granted, or was it just me? I kept wondering why I was the one feeling so much anger and resentment, while everyone else seemed to just go along with things. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Maybe I was the one making it a bigger issue than it needed to be. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. It was about being seen and valued for the hard work I put in. It was about knowing that the company recognized the sacrifices I had made and acknowledged the effort I had put in. Instead, I had been rejected. And that rejection, more than the money itself, stung the most. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been treated unfairly. But could I really just leave? Could I really walk away from a job where I had given so much, where I had built relationships with my coworkers just because I felt undervalued? Was that the right thing to do? What would it mean if I just gave up? I kept thinking about the times I had stayed late to cover shifts, the times I had stayed late when no one else could. How many times had I stepped in when no one else would? How many times had I ignored my own needs and prioritized the job just to make sure everything went smoothly? But then I thought about that moment when I said no. That moment when I finally had enough. I realized that no one, not my manager, not anyone, should make me feel guilty for taking care of myself. They had expected so much from me, and I had given it, but at some point I had to set a limit. At some point, I had to stop letting myself be treated as though I were disposable. I thought about my future. How long could I keep going like this, giving and giving without receiving anything in return? How long before I burned out completely? Was this how it was supposed to be in the real world? Was this what I had to accept for the rest of my life? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't being unreasonable. I wasn't asking for too much. I deserved to be treated with respect. I deserved recognition for the work I was doing. And when I thought about it that way, the answer became clear. I had been loyal, yes, but loyalty without recognition, without fairness, wasn't enough anymore. It was time to make a change. It was time to find a place where I could grow, where my work would be valued, and where I wouldn't have to feel like I was being taken advantage of just for doing my job. The internal conflict slowly faded away. I knew I wasn't wrong. I wasn't overreacting. I was just asking for what I deserved. And now it was time to stand up for myself and make a change. After weeks of struggling with my thoughts, I had finally reached a decision. I was done. It wasn't just the rejection, the disappointment, or the lack of respect from my manager. It was everything. It was the way my hard work had been dismissed, the way my time had been undervalued, and the way I had been made to feel like my loyalty didn't matter. I couldn't stay at a job that didn't recognize my worth. I couldn't keep giving more and more of myself without getting anything in return. It wasn't just about the raise anymore, it was about respect. It was about feeling like I had a place in the company, like I was a valued part of the team. And right now, I didn't feel that way. I felt like a cog in the machine, easily replaceable, easily forgotten. It wasn't an easy decision to make. I had invested so much of my time, energy, and even my personal life into this job. I had been loyal, I had worked hard, and I had sacrificed so much. But after everything that had happened, the rejection, the lack of appreciation, I knew deep down that I deserved more, and as much as I hated the idea of leaving, I knew it was the right thing to do. I started quietly looking for other jobs. I knew I couldn't keep waiting around for things to get better at my current job. I had given them enough chances, and each time they had let me down. I needed something better, something where my hard work would be recognized, where I would be treated fairly, and where I could feel like I was actually making progress. It was both exciting and terrifying. I had never quit a job before, let alone without having another one lined up. The uncertainty was overwhelming at times. What if I couldn't find something else? What if the next job was just as bad? What if I ended up regretting my decision? There were so many questions, so many what-ifs, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't appreciated. I couldn't keep putting up with the way I had been treated. So, I began to apply. I updated my resume, started reaching out to people in my network, and sent out applications. I spent hours each day searching for job listings, trying to find something that aligned with my skills and my values. I wanted a job where I could grow, where I could feel like my work mattered, and most importantly, where I could be treated with the respect I deserved. It wasn't long before I started getting responses. Some interviews, some follow-up questions. But even as I got further into the process, there was a part of me that still felt guilty. I had been loyal. I had put in so much effort. I was leaving behind colleagues I had worked closely with, and I felt like I was abandoning something that I had worked so hard to build. But every time I had those thoughts, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was choosing myself. I was choosing my future, my happiness, and my well-being over the toxic environment that had started to consume me. It wasn't long before I had a few offers. The excitement of knowing that I had options, that I could finally leave behind the company that had treated me poorly, was overwhelming. I knew it was time. I had the chance to build a better future for myself, and I wasn't going to let fear or guilt hold me back. I walked into work the next day with a new sense of confidence. I had already made my decision, and I was just waiting for the right moment to give my notice. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But I also knew that I couldn't keep working in an environment that didn't value me. I wasn't going to stay in a job just because I felt guilty. I had earned the right to ask for more, and I had earned the right to walk away when it wasn't given to me. Later that week, I sat down with my manager to resign. I didn't have to explain everything. She already knew. I had made my point clear in every shift I worked, in every extra hour I put in every sacrifice I made. It wasn't a dramatic exit, it was quiet, simple, and to the point. But as I handed in my resignation, I felt a sense of relief. I knew that I was finally taking control of my life and my career. I was walking away from a toxic environment and stepping into a future where I could be valued and respected. As I walked out the door for the last time, I took a deep breath. I was nervous, yes, but I also felt empowered. I had made the choice for myself. I had made the choice to stop settling for less than I deserved, and that in itself was worth everything. As the days passed since I left my job, I started to reflect more on everything that had happened and how much I had invested, emotionally and physically, in that place. It was hard to let go of the feeling that I had somehow failed, that I was walking away from something I had worked so hard to build. I had given so much of myself to that company, pouring in hours, energy, and even a little piece of my spirit with every shift, every task, every extra mile I went. It wasn't just a job to me. It was an attachment, something I had invested time and care into. But as I thought more about it, the truth started to settle in. My attachment to the job wasn't the same as the company's attachment to me. For them, I was just another employee. Sure, they'd appreciate my work when it was convenient for them, but when it came time to show real appreciation, when it came time to invest in me, they fell short. The company wasn't emotionally invested in me the way I had been emotionally invested in them. And that was the heart of the problem. At first, leaving felt like I was breaking up with something that had been a big part of my life. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't actually leaving a family or a team. I was leaving a place that had taken advantage of my loyalty. I had been fooled into thinking my hard work meant something, but when I asked for a little in return, a small recognition of my efforts, I was met with rejection. And that was the moment I had to face the reality loyalty in the workplace, no matter how much you give, doesn't always come with loyalty in return. It's hard to accept that you're not as valuable to a company as you thought. I had wanted so badly to be seen as irreplaceable, to have my dedication acknowledged in a meaningful way. But when I asked for a raise, something so simple and reasonable, I was reminded that work is ultimately transactional. The company, no matter how much I had given, wouldn't give me what I deserved. And that was an eye-opening lesson. I had always heard people say that work is about more than just a paycheck. It's about fulfillment, passion, and the connections we make. But the reality is, if you're not being fairly compensated for your efforts, if you're not treated with the respect you deserve, those things lose their meaning. Passion doesn't pay your bills. Dedication doesn't feed you or provide security. And when those things aren't being reciprocated by the company, it becomes clear work can be just a job, a means to an end. It's not always the loving, supportive environment we imagine it to be. But here's the part I had to realize is that's okay. It's okay to see work as a means to an end. It's okay to be realistic about what a job is supposed to provide. I had fallen into the trap of romanticizing my role, thinking that my devotion would be rewarded. But work, in the end, is a business, and businesses are about profit, not about nurturing your self-worth. I had to learn that the way I felt about the job wasn't the same as how the company felt about me. And that's where I went wrong. I had let my emotions cloud my judgment, allowing myself to get too attached to a place that wasn't going to offer me what I truly needed. The company wasn't interested in making me feel valued. It was interested in how much I could give for how little they could give me in return. And that's the harsh truth about work. No matter how much we care, no matter how much we give, it's often not enough to make us irreplaceable in the eyes of the company. I had to let go of the idea that my worth was tied to this job. It wasn't. I wasn't defined by the work I did or how hard I worked. I was defined by my abilities, my values, and the way I carried myself. Regardless of how a company chose to treat me, work didn't own me, and it certainly didn't own my self-worth. So, what did I learn from all this? First, I learned that work is transactional. No matter how much passion you put into it, you have to know your worth. You have to know when to set boundaries and when to walk away from something that doesn't serve you anymore. Second, I realized that you are not defined by your job. Your value doesn't come from the hours you put in, the extra shifts you pick up, or how much you sacrifice. You are worth more than that. And lastly, I understood that loyalty to a company doesn't always get you loyalty in return. And that's not a personal failure. It's just the way the business world works. In the end, I chose myself. I chose my time, my well-being, and my happiness. I realized that I didn't need to sacrifice my mental health and personal life just to be a good employee. I had to let go of that attachment, step into the real world, and look for a place that truly valued me, where I could be paid fairly, recognized for my contributions, and respected as a person, not just as an employee. Job hunting wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences I've ever gone through. After resigning from a job that had drained me, emotionally and physically, I felt like I was stepping into the unknown. I was nervous about finding something else, about whether I would get hired again, and about whether I would regret walking away. But the more I dove into job listings, updated my resume, and started talking to potential employers, the more I realized something crucial. I was learning to value myself in a way I never had before. I started seeing job hunting differently. It wasn't just about finding any job to pay the bills. It wasn't just about taking whatever came my way out of desperation. It was about finding a place where I could feel respected. A place where my contributions would be acknowledged. A place where I could grow professionally and be treated fairly. In the beginning, I had doubts. The fear of not being good enough crept in. Would they want me? Was I qualified enough? I had to remind myself that I was worth it. I had spent so much time in my old job proving my worth to a company that didn't even value me. Now, it was my turn to find a place that would see the value I had to offer and treat me with the respect I deserved. As I went through the process, I learned a few things about knowing your worth that I never fully understood before. First, I realized that when you know your value, you stop settling. I used to believe that I should be grateful just to have a job, any job, because that's what everyone told me. But the truth is, I was selling myself short by accepting a role that didn't appreciate me. Once I understood my worth, I knew that I had the right to ask for more. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of respect and recognition. The interviews I went on weren't just about my qualifications. They were also about whether I felt that company valued the same things I did. Was the company a place where employees were treated fairly? Did they offer growth opportunities? Did they appreciate hard work and commitment? The more interviews I had, the clearer it became that I needed to feel valued in a workplace, not just like a cog in a machine. One of the most important lessons I learned during this job search was how to ask the right questions. In past jobs, I had always been the one to listen and follow instructions. I never thought to ask about the company culture or how employees were treated. This time, I wasn't just looking for a paycheck. I was looking for a place that saw me as a partner, not just an employee. I asked questions like, how do you recognize hard work? What kind of growth opportunities do you offer your employees? How does the company support work-life balance? And the answers I got spoke volumes. The more I asked, the more I realized that a company's treatment of its employees said a lot about how much they valued them. I wasn't going to settle for a company that saw me as disposable. I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I felt undervalued and underappreciated. Knowing your worth means not being afraid to walk away from a place that doesn't offer you the respect and recognition you deserve. As I moved through the job search process, I also realized something else: I didn't have to be desperate. I had options. There were plenty of companies out there that would appreciate my skills, my dedication, and my work ethic. And while the fear of not finding something else did linger, I reminded myself that I didn't need to take the first offer I received. I had the power to choose the job that was right for me, the one that respected my time, my energy, and my value. Finally, after several interviews, I found it. I found a company that recognized my worth, that saw my experience and my potential. They valued me not just for the work I would do, but for the person I was. And when they made their offer, it was everything I had hoped for: fair compensation, a supportive work environment, and opportunities for growth. The best part, I walked into this new role knowing that I had set the standard for how I wanted to be treated, and I wasn't willing to settle for less. Leaving my old job wasn't easy. It wasn't just about walking away from a paycheck. It was about letting go of the attachment I had to a company that hadn't treated me right. But what I gained in the process, the knowledge of my own value, was worth every bit of discomfort. I had learned to advocate for myself, to ask for what I deserved, and to never settle for less than what I was worth. Looking back, I realized that leaving was the best decision I could have made. Not because I found a better job, but because I learned how to value myself. I learned that I wasn't just someone to be used, I was someone to be appreciated. And once I knew my worth, I found a place that truly respected me. Looking back, everything I went through to get here feels like it was worth it. At the time, when I was questioning my worth and wondering if I was asking for too much, I never thought I'd end up where I am now. Feeling more confident, more valued, and most importantly, at peace with the decision I made. When I walked away from my old job, I had no idea what the future held. I was nervous, uncertain, and scared that I had made a huge mistake. I had invested so much time, effort, and energy into that place, and leaving felt like leaving a piece of myself behind. But as I went through the process of job hunting and realized that I could do better, that I could be treated with respect and appreciation, something clicked inside me. I had always thought that loyalty to a company meant giving everything I had, that if I worked hard enough, eventually I would be rewarded. But in reality, loyalty works both ways. If a company values you, they'll show it through actions, not just words. They'll recognize your contributions, compensate you fairly, and respect your time. I had spent too many years believing that being loyal meant sacrificing my well-being for the company's benefit. But what I learned is that loyalty shouldn't come at the cost of your happiness or self-respect. When I found my new job, everything changed. The moment I walked into my new workplace, I felt like I was finally in a place where I could thrive. They saw me as an asset, not just an employee. They valued my skills and experience, and they treated me like a person, not just a tool for the company to use. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my efforts were appreciated. And with that came a huge shift in how I saw myself. I realized that I wasn't defined by my job or how much I was willing to sacrifice for it. I was defined by my value, by my ability to contribute, my worth as a person, and the way I carried myself in any situation. I wasn't just someone who worked hard for the sake of working hard. I was someone who deserved to be treated with respect, who deserved to have my time and efforts acknowledged. It took walking away from a job that didn't value me to fully understand my own worth. I spent so much time trying to prove myself to a company that only saw me as expendable, thinking that if I worked hard enough, things would change. But the truth is, you can't prove your worth to people who don't see it. I spent too long hoping that they would recognize my efforts, when in reality, the only person who truly needed to recognize my worth was me. I had spent so much time being loyal to a company that wasn't loyal to me, and in doing so, I had neglected my own needs. But once I started to put myself first, everything changed. I realized that I deserved to be treated with fairness, to be compensated for my work, and to have a life outside of my job. My worth wasn't tied to how much I worked or how much I sacrificed. My worth was about who I was. Someone who deserved respect and recognition, not just for the work I did, but for simply being me. It wasn't just the new job that made me realize this. It was the entire process, the quitting, the job search, the interviews, and finally finding a place where I felt valued. It was a wake-up call. I had spent so long feeling like I wasn't enough, like I had to keep proving myself, like I wasn't worthy of more. But I was wrong. I am worthy of more. We all are. I've learned that no job, no company, no position is worth sacrificing your dignity or your happiness. If a company doesn't appreciate you, there are always better opportunities out there. You just have to be willing to walk away and know that you deserve to be treated with the respect you've earned. Leaving my old job was hard, but it was the best decision I ever made. It taught me that loyalty isn't about endlessly giving without receiving anything in return. It's about being with people, whether in work or life, who see your worth and respect it. So, as I walk into this new chapter of my career, I carry this lesson with me. I deserve better. Not just at work, but in every area of my life. I deserve to be treated with respect, to be valued for who I am, and to have my efforts recognized in a way that's meaningful. And as I settle into this new job, I feel a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. I know that I made the right choice for myself. The stress, the uncertainty, the fear of leaving something behind, all of it was worth it, because now I know my worth. And I won't ever settle for less than I deserve again. As I look back on the journey that led me to this point, from the initial frustration of being rejected for a raise to finally walking away from a job that didn't appreciate me, I realize how much I've grown. I've learned that no job, no paycheck, no company is worth sacrificing your worth and well-being. The most important lesson I've learned through this whole experience is that you should never work for a company that doesn't respect you. I spent so much time giving more than I should have, thinking that my hard work would eventually be recognized. But the truth is, when you're not valued, no amount of sacrifice will change that. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how loyal you are, or how many extra shifts you take on. If they aren't willing to acknowledge your worth, it's time to move on. Leaving that job was difficult, but it was also freeing. I no longer felt like I was stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and frustration. I had taken control of my career and, most importantly, my happiness. It wasn't about the money, it was about the respect and recognition I deserved. Once I made the decision to prioritize myself, everything else began to fall into place. Now, I have a new job where I am respected. I am treated as a valuable part of the team, and my contributions are acknowledged. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in a place that values my hard work, my loyalty, and my time. And it's a relief, not just professionally, but emotionally. So, if you're in a situation where you feel like your efforts are going unnoticed, where your time is being taken for granted, or where you're being asked to sacrifice without any reward, I want you to remember this: you deserve better. Don't let anyone convince you that you should settle for less than you're worth. If they don't respect you, leave. There are better opportunities out there, and you have the right to choose a job that will value you. Don't make the same mistake I did. Know your worth and never work for a company that doesn't respect you. You deserve to be treated with the respect and fairness that you give to others. And when you start to recognize that for yourself, the world of work becomes a much brighter place. Have you ever felt undervalued at work? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about knowing your worth and the importance of standing up for yourself in the workplace. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on building a career where you are truly appreciated.